This past weekend, the Browns drafted a guy whose collegiate head coach literally described him as a gift from the football gods.
You're listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast, an iconoclastic look at the latest Cleveland Browns news. The What the Elf Was That podcast is part of the Fanatical Elves podcast network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here's your host, Joel Cade.
Welcome into What the Elf Was That? And I am going to turn on our background music. Yes, for those of you who wonders, there has always been background music. All right, so in case you missed it, the NFL draft was last weekend, and the Cleveland Browns had a tremendous draft, getting graded positively and glowing reviews from all the pundits and all the people that know. I think the Browns had a good draft. I want to start the show by just talking very quickly about what can you learn from this year's draft about the draft period. Okay, what did we learn? One, I think we've learned that nobody knows anything about anybody in this draft, that there are a lot of people out there who watch tape, who don't watch tape, who have all kinds of reasons to grab whoever they want. And in the end, nobody really knows anything. So it doesn't really make sense to fall in love with the prospect. Hey, I want this guy. I want that guy. I want this guy. Because nobody really knows what's happening. But it is kind of fun. You know, the poker game goes on, and the Browns played, by the way, magnificent poker game. And we'll get into this here, but tremendous poker game. And number two, more than nobody knows anything, we can't know anything. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes, right? We don't know what's happening beneath the radar, beneath the tape. So you don't really know who you're getting with what. I mean, I'm kind of feeling some buyer's remorse with Shedeur Sanders. You know, the Browns in the 5th round picked up Shedeur Sanders, and then all the stuff started coming out of him, and I thought, yikes, do we really want to bring this to Cleveland? But he's here, and we're going to deal with it, and we're going to have it. But I think it's still a good pick to have Shedeur Sanders on the staff. But it raises some questions. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this situation. What was the Browns' strategy this weekend, and what were they attempting to establish this past weekend? I think the Browns draft all has to do around with the fact that Jimmy Haslam came out and stated, we took a swing and missed on Deshaun Watson. If we think of the Browns draft in those terms, what unfolded this past weekend makes a lot of sense. All right. The Browns took a swing, traded 3 first-round picks, traded multiple picks afterward on players with a win-now mentality. The Browns had we have our quarterback, we need to win now, we have the team to win now, and we're going to do everything in our power to go in to win now. And then that did not work. That didn't happen. Deshaun Watson was not as advertised. He did not come in and play lights out. He did not win football games for Cleveland. And so this past year, the Browns came to the reality of we need to rebuild, not fire everybody and start over. That's like burning the whole thing down. We're not getting rid of everybody and bringing in all new people. But at some point, if you're out there shooting a gun, you got to reload the gun. And you may have been shooting everything you had thinking this is our final stand. And then when it's all said and done and you're living in the rubble, you got to figure out how to pick up and move on. And that's where the Browns are at. They're living in the rubble of the failed Deshaun Watson trade. And now they have to figure out where we're going from here. With that in mind, if you think of what the Browns did this past weekend, the moves that they made sense. First, they talked up Travis Hunter, right? Travis Hunter is a two-way star. He's the Shohei Ohtani of baseball, which I thought was ridiculous and out of control. But they were able to convince the Jacksonville Jaguars in a scene almost straight out of the movie Draft Day. The Browns call up the Jacksonville Jaguars and make them look like fools. Of course, if you're the Jaguars, you don't think look like fools, but I think to everyone else, you look like a fool. And was able to get first round draft pick next year, a second round pick this year, which was spent on a very good running back, and able to start to retool this team, rebuild this team. So that's the first thing they do. Then with that first pick, they come out and they pick a defensive tackle. Now, I was sitting there like, what in the world? We just picked a defensive tackle. And I was not very happy because I wanted Shedeur Sanders. And I thought, you drop back to 5, pick up Shedeur Sanders, nobody's going to say anything, right? But you pick a defensive tackle. That defensive tackle played in Michigan. I watched the tape. Great pick. By the way, just to piggyback off the intro, John Harbaugh literally called Mason Graham a gift from the football gods. Mason Graham owns the defensive line. He owns the line of scrimmage. I mean, I can't even describe it enough. This man will take that defensive tackle position and put all the issues we've had there to rest. And I know you guys have Browns fans who've watched Browns games. You're frustrated just like I am. Any team shows up, they just start running the ball up the middle. You're staying away from Myles Garrett on the edge, where the Browns' strength is actually on the edge. Okay, you got Alex Wright. You've got Isaiah McGuire to go along with Myles Garrett. Myles, show me the money, Garrett. The strength is on the edge. The weakness of that defensive line is up the middle. The other weakness in that defense is the linebacker position, because there's been so many injuries in that linebacker position. It's absolutely insane. So they get Mason Graham, you plug him in, and he's going to own the space from guard to other guard. And there will be another guy in there playing in that same situation between those 3 players, the center, the guard, and the other guard. The center, the guard, and the other guard, like Mason Graham, and if it's Mike Hall Jr., they're going to create some havoc up the middle. And that has been a serious weakness for the Browns. So there we go already. We're already retooling, rebuilding that defense. You're trading back. You're getting a future first-round pick so that if you want to get a quarterback next year, you can. If you want to get 2 first-round picks next year, you can. You're already starting the defensive line. Round 2. All right, so Shedeur Sanders drops, right? And you're thinking, oh, the Browns are going to take the quarterback at 33. Nobody's going to bat an eye at this, and we can like at least have a project for the quarterback room and move on. But the Browns go in and take Schlesinger, linebacker out of UCLA, the first pick of the second round. Tremendous pick. If you watch this guy, tremendous. Reads defenses, understands where to go, avoids blocks, and makes tackles, and just goes and goes and goes. Exactly what you want in the middle of the defense. And he's smart. He works hard. He can be the captain of that team if he wanted the defense, if he needs to be. He can be the guy who wears the green dot, who communicates with the sideline and calls the plays. Schlesinger is going to be a great pick. He's going to be a great player. Raises some questions about the future of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but hey. So the Browns automatically already doing what? They're solidifying the massive holes in defense, right? They're putting that defense up the middle. They're drafting to resolve the issue there, because that's where teams attack the Browns, up the middle with the running game, and they threw over the middle in the passing game, avoiding the corners, avoiding the safeties. The Browns could use another safety, but hey, there's draft next year. Then in the second round, the Browns draft Quinshon Judkins. And thus begins the beginning of rebuilding the offense. The Browns, by nature, if they're going back to the outside zone offense, are a running football team. You need to have players who can run the football. Quinshon Judkins is, by definition, the bell cow running back that can take 20 carries a game, although you'd rather him not. You'd rather him take between 12 and 15 carries a game and run the ball and keep the sticks moving. Just run up the middle, run out the side, get 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards a pop, break one for 15, 20. That keeps you in the game. That's a running game, right? That's what you need. You need a running game. So then the next picks come along, okay? And the Browns take, I forget who they took in the third round. That's okay. The Browns take, the big discussion here is the quarterback, okay, Dillon Gabriel. In the third round, I believe it was their second pick of the third round. Their first pick, I believe, going to, I'm going to get these mixed, Fanning and and Sampson mixed up. But I believe they took Fanning in the beginning of the third round. Tight end out of Bowling Green. Excellent tight end. Catches the ball all over the place. Not so much of an inline guy, but a guy you can run all over the field, and he'll catch the ball, run with the ball. Looks like he's like Fred Flintstone. If you go back and watch this guy run, he looks like he's Fred Flintstone, where their feet never leaves the ground and it's just going real fast. And then he moves somehow, and you're like, what am I looking at? It kind of looks like Fred Flintstone running the football down the field after he catches it. Great kind of chess piece to move all over the place. If you're asking him to block, that may not be what he's about, but he will line up all over the place. He'll provide mismatches because he's a tight end. He will make teams think that you're in a 2 tight end set, and then all of a sudden you shift out and you're in a 3 wide receiver set, and then you can get some mismatches based on that. So this is the guy you move around, you put him in motion, you line him up inside, move him outside, line him outside, move him inside. Good kind of piece to deal with as a player. But as a quarterback, the quarterback taking the third round was Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel was the guy they had targeted all along. It was either Cam Ward or Dillon Gabriel. If you go back and watch Dillon Gabriel, and I know this might be a little bit difficult for Ohio State fans to go back and watch some of these games, particularly these games against Ohio State. Watch the one in the Rose Bowl. Go for it. Do it. If you watch the regular season game, that's an interesting one as well. Dillon Gabriel does exactly what the Browns offense wants them to do, which is play in structure, throw those short intermediate passes on time, on rhythm, and operate the offense as kind of like a point guard. That's what he does. That's what the Browns want in a guy. That's why they chose him. That's why they like him. Then gets us to the controversial pick. Oh, let's actually take that back. In round 4, they grabbed Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. If Quinshon Judkins is thunder, Dylan Sampson is lightning, fast, quick, can hit the ball, long ball, but he's not much of a between the tackles runner like Judkins is. Great piece to have on the field. Another chess piece. You can move here, there, like from the backfield to the wide receiver, from the wide receiver back in the backfield, create mismatches. Great player to grab there. Then the controversial pick comes when in the 5th round, Shedeur Sanders is still sitting there. And I'm not going to talk about his fall. If you really want that, let me know. We'll talk about it. But Shedeur Sanders is there, and the Browns take a flyer on him. And I think this was the absolute best thing to do. When you have a guy with that much talent, but he's dropped to the 5th round, that means he has alienated somebody somewhere. He either doesn't do what you need him to do, you don't want him to change your offense for him, or he has completely bombed all of his interviews, and he comes off as a player that you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Those are the players you take in the 5th round, and you say, hey, we'll take a chance. And if it works out, great. If not, we'll cut it, period. Speaking of cutting him, let's take a quick break for station identification, but more like let's pay the bills. So after this break, we'll get back into what's going on with the quarterback room. All right, see you after the break. All right, and we're back. So the Browns in the draft 2 quarterbacks, and this has become the big, what are the Browns doing? Yeah, it's kind of funny because you listen to people talk about, if you don't have a quarterback, you just don't have a quarterback. You need to take as many shots as you can. And so the Browns literally go out there and draft as many quarterbacks as they can. And people are wondering why they're drafting as many quarterbacks as they can. Guys, whoever's listening, it's about getting the quarterback position right. Plus, he was a high-end talent coming at bargain bottom prices. Let's try it out. Maybe it works out. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he shows up and acts a fool. If he shows up and acts a fool, just cut him. I will say that I have some buyer's remorse on Sanders. I wanted Sanders from the very beginning, and I was a big kind of like, let's take Shedeur Sanders kind of guy. And then I hear all this stuff coming out about him in the draft, and I'm wondering, did he really show up and try to tank an interview? Did he really show up and like get mad because he didn't study the playbook? All the red flags. He sent out every single red flag that you can think of to send out to tell people to stay away from him. And the Browns took him anyway. So I'm a little apprehensive after hearing some of this stuff, but if he can straighten himself out, get his situation figured out, get his head on straight, come in, work hard, be the best player he could be, he could be that guy. He could be that quarterback. Am I optimistic at this point? Slightly. I don't know. I'm not sure where he's going to be able to overcome the stupidity that has been his life up until then. He's going to have to do a serious 180. This is going to have to be viewed as a rock bottom situation for him, and I don't know if that's the case. But if it is, and he decides I'm going to have this moment where I'm going to prove myself, this could have been an absolute steal for the Browns. But with that, the Browns now have 5 quarterbacks in their quarterback room. You got Deshaun Watson, who nobody expects to see because of an injury. I got that little bubble up there now again. That's terrific. Nobody expects to see him because of his Achilles injury. So then we're realistically dealing with 4 quarterbacks with Joe Flacco, the veteran who's coming in to stabilize the position and make things work out for the Browns so that the Browns are somewhat mildly competitive next year, but not too competitive because you want a good pick next year if you want your quarterback. And that's the kind of the role Joe Flacco has. Then there was the trade the Browns made for Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett was the trade where the 5th round pick and Dorian Thompson-Robinson for Kenny Pickett. That was the quote unquote lottery ticket. That was the situation where let's take this guy and let's invest in him and see if he can become our long-term quarterback. Okay. So Pickett's going to come in on the last deal. By the way, the Browns did not pick up his 5th-year option, so I don't blame them. They'd be paying him $22 million next year, and they're not paying some guy $22 million to be on the 2nd contract or on the 5th year of his rookie deal after he's been, I believe, released once. Maybe he's been traded twice. I'm not sure exactly what they've done here. But you don't want to invest that much money on that guy. So they're not picking up his option. That doesn't mean that the Browns are out on him. It just means we're not committing to paying you $22 million when we have $40 million wrapped up into a guy that's already on our roster hurt. So that's all that means. Kenny Pickett's the lottery ticket, right? He's the guy you're going to attempt to invest in to see if he can be more than what he has been in the past. If he's not, okay, you just, at the end of the year, he's a free agent. If he signs somewhere else, then you might get a compensatory pick. Win-win for everybody. Then you've got now Dillon Gabriel. I'm going to go in the order of their drafted. Dillon Gabriel, then Shedeur Sanders. Dillon Gabriel comes in. He fits what you're trying to do in that offense. He's going to have to learn to play under center because he hasn't done that yet. But he can hand the ball off, run play action passes. He can read a defense, throw the ball on rhythm, throw it to where it needs to be accurately, and he could be a good backup. He also needs to work on longer throws. Can you drive the longer throws outside the number against cover 2? That's the one throw that people want to see you make. Can you throw it in the hole in cover 2? He hasn't shown that he can do that. I'm hearing all kinds of numbers about he threw this fast and this hard, broke the record at the Senior Bowl for how fast he can throw a football. That doesn't mean he can drive it into the hole on against a cover 2 defense. If you're wondering what that means, is cover 2 is 2 safeties high. Then you're playing zone underneath with corners up toward the line of scrimmage. The corners are playing the flat zones. The 2 high safeties are playing the deep zones. There's a hole, which is called the hole shot. If you can get past the outside corner before the safety can come over and cover, you've got a little hole right there in the defense that if you can zip the ball in there, you can get some big-time yards out of it. But it requires an accurate, hard, strong throw. And the question is, can Dillon Gabriel make that throw? Okay, so Dillon Gabriel drafted to be the backup, probably a long-term backup, but in a pinch, he could start. Probably not looking at him as the long-term starter. Maybe you are. Maybe he comes in and he says, hey, I can be the long-term starter. But if you thought that, you probably drafted him in the 1st round and not the 3rd. Which leads us to Shedeur Sanders. This is the real interesting piece of the Browns draft. They pick up this guy essentially for like nothing, for a quarter. In the 5th round, this is a guy who has all the physical tools. He has the arm. He can make the hole shot. He can throw the ball on time. He can make the plays that you want from a traditional pocket franchise quarterback. The question for Shedeur Sanders, one, is what kind of a circus is he bringing with him, and what's the kind of the deal in the off the field stuff. But 2, on the field, he holds on to the ball too long. He likes to escape out the back of the pocket, which is really bad. And we can discuss that at a later date if you want. But I think it's really bad to try to escape backward, you always want to run forward between the tackle and the guard if you're going to run out of the pocket. Always go forward. But he likes to run backward and out. Shedeur Sanders will have to do more work under center, although he has been under center. And it's, as everyone who's followed the draft knows, he didn't really have much of a running game at Colorado. So the Browns drafting 2 running backs is already designed to take some pressure off of whatever quarterback is going to be there. The complication becomes, well, which quarterback do you cut? Because you can't carry 4. I mean, you could, but you're going to lose a position, and that's not really what I think the Browns want to be doing. So you're going to have to part ways with somebody, either cut them, put them on the practice squad, but you can't put them on the practice squad until you cut them and they clear waivers. And I'm not sure either Shedeur Sanders or Dillon Gabriel's clearing waivers. Pickett might. I doubt it, but he might cover waivers, clear waivers. So who's the odd man out here? And I think the issue, it comes to the end of the day, and it's just speculation because we don't know what's going on in Berea, but it makes sense to think that Dillon Gabriel is going to be your backup. He's going to at least be quarterback 3. He has the skill set to be quarterback 3. He's cheap. He's on a rookie deal. You're not paying him a lot of money. And he's going to be there. He's going to be solid. He's going to be the guy that just can run the offense if somebody gets hurt. So what you're talking about now is the competition between the 2 quote unquote lottery tickets, the chances, right? The Browns' plan coming into the draft was just to take a chance on Kenny Pickett. If it worked out, it did. If it didn't, you're going to have a high pick next year in this rebuild situation and take a high-end quarterback. That plan was predicated on, we're not drafting Shedeur Sanders, and we're going to just build for next year. But then Shedeur Sanders was still there, and you had an opportunity to take him. So then it's like, hey, let's take the flyer on Shedeur Sanders. And Shedeur Sanders also is this kind of lottery ticket because you've got a free opportunity on him, and you can develop him, you can not develop him. He'll work out, he'll not work out. The question is, when do you have to make that decision? If I had to place money on it now, and we're talking about the Thursday after the draft, okay, I would guess that somewhere in training camp, toward the end of training camp or the middle of training camp, some team's going to have a quarterback go down, and they're going to call the Browns about Kenny Pickett, and he's going to be gone. That's going to be my guess, because they're going to take the chance on Shedeur. And if Shedeur works out, and they're going to need to know before they head into the 2026 draft where they stand with Shedeur Sanders. So I'm not going to promise, but I'm pretty confident that you're going to see Shedeur Sanders on the field in the regular season. If the season starts going bad, if Joe Flacco for some reason doesn't work out, if it doesn't pan out the way we want it to with him, if the Flacco magic is not there, we will see Gabriel or Sanders pretty early, or at least mid-season, and let them ride it out to see what we've got. You're going to need 4 or 5 games apiece from each of them just for them to get caught up to the NFL speed and to kind of make a decision, like, who do we like, who do we not like? All right, so that's my take on the Browns draft. If you got any questions or comments, email me at the leftguard at gmail.com, or leave a comment below and I'll try to get back and review it. The Browns had a really good draft, but let's go to my favorite part of the draft, my favorite part of this podcast, and let's discuss what our friends in Baltimore are doing.
I'm actually a Ravens fan.
Go to hell.
That's right. Go to hell. The Baltimore Ravens. Little known fact about the Baltimore Ravens. There was one player that came into the NFL draft with sexual harassment allegations levied against them, and they were falling in the draft. Now, mind you, as we've discussed many and many times, the Baltimore Ravens have a zero tolerance policy. They have a kicker named Justin Tucker who has 18 allegations of sexual harassment, and they're dealing with that issue with their no tolerance policy. And then there's one player in the NFL draft who has sexual harassment allegations against them, and guess what team takes that player? That's right, the Baltimore Ravens, the model team of the NFL, the holy of holies of teams, the franchise that everybody wants to strive to be, drafted the only player in the NFL draft with sexual harassment allegations against them. I think the Baltimore Ravens don't really care what their players do to the city. I'm guessing you bring in this guy. What does that say about your feelings toward the city that you're in? The Brown, I'm not going to tell you who he is because I don't want to start there and keep going with that. You can look up who has the allegations, but the fact that the Ravens would be the one to pick him says everything you need to know about the Baltimore Ravens. Further, Jim Harbaugh gets into the press conference and says, hey, we did our work on this guy. We were comfortable with who he is. We're comfortable with the allegations, and we were comfortable bringing him into Baltimore, which begs the question, okay? You have a zero tolerance policy. You're out there talking about how great and holy and just you are as an organization, putting that out there for everyone to see, which is lies, right? They're like the shadiest people you'll ever meet. If you come into the draft and nobody is touching you because you have sexual harassment allegations, and you as the Baltimore Ravens are comfortable with him, when nobody else is, you're comfortable with him, what does it take for the Ravens to take you off their draft board? I mean, what kind of horrendous crap do you have to do for the Ravens to say, we're not comfortable with you? Because clearly the Ravens are comfortable with people who murder people. They're comfortable with people who beat the crap out of their spouses. They're comfortable with people who commit sexual harassment. Who are they not comfortable with? What does it even take? It's a joke for Jim Harbaugh to sit up there and say, we looked into it and we're comfortable. Of course you're comfortable with it. He can play football. That's all you care about. You don't care if they murder or kill or rape people. You don't care one bit. As long as he shows up on Sunday and plays football, he can be Dennis the Menace out there for the rest of the week. Nobody cares. Speaking of Dennis the Menace, Justin Tucker, my favorite person to talk about, is still on the Ravens roster. However, the Ravens did exactly what I told them to do. I told them, if you listen to this podcast, they need to go out there and draft a kicker so that they can get this guy off their roster. And that's exactly what they did. The Ravens went out and drafted Tyler Loop out of Arizona, a guy who can kick the ball 60-plus yards, and drafted him to be on the team. And the first thing the announcers say when they draft him is, you don't draft a guy in the 6th round to be a kicker if you don't plan on him making your team, which is true because you can get kickers at undrafted free agents like nobody's business. Cade York is still out there. You can just sign him and bring him into camp, no problem. But they went out and drafted a guy, which means they expect not only that he will be on their roster, but they expect him to be on that team long term. Otherwise, you wouldn't have wasted a draft pick on him. So what does that mean? Well, reading between the lines, it means that they expect Justin Tucker to be dealt with by the NFL for these sexual harassment allegations. Deshaun Watson got suspended half the season. Maybe that's what's going to happen with Justin Tucker. And maybe the Ravens know they're going to get a suspension, which means the Ravens have to know that something about this situation, the confirmed, we've kicked you out of our massage parlor situation because of your behavior, Justin Tucker, they have to know that at some level he's done these things to merit all this stuff from the businesses he's thrown out of. And that the NFL is going to find this stuff and they're going to suspend him next year. And therefore they need a kicker and they drafted one. And yet with their zero tolerance policy, they can surmise that this guy's probably guilty of sin and they still have them on their roster. What does it take for somebody to be so toxic that even the Ravens won't take them? Because it seems like the more toxic of a player you are, the more likely you're going to end up on the Baltimore Ravens. Like, hey, this guy shot someone. Ravens are like, sign me up. We'll take that guy. Or, hey, I just beat up my wife. The Ravens are like, hey, sign here, play for us. What does it take for the Ravens to not bring one of these criminals or murderers or menaces to society into Baltimore? And you wonder why Baltimore's, I'm not even going to go there. There are some rather prominent politicians who've made some comments about the city that the Ravens are making it look like it's true. All right, ladies and gentlemen, to wrap up, I think the Browns did exactly what I asked them to do, which is take players that can play football. Mason Graham plays football. Schlesinger plays football. Fannin plays football. Judkins can play football. Dylan Sampson can play football. Shedeur Sanders can play football. Dylan Gabriel can play football. Gone, at least in this draft, the Browns did not draft one of these players like the Bengals did, where they have a whole bunch of talent, but have 4 sacks over 4 years of college football. Browns got players who are productive, can play football, and they're rebuilding this roster. And as far as I can tell, this is exactly what the Browns need to be doing. And they're going to take a shot on a quarterback that fell to them because, well, I mean, clearly, you know, he's not bad enough for the Browns to take off the board. So we've got him now. All right, until next week.
Thank you for listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to give a listen. You can follow host Joel Cade on Twitter @TheLeftGuard.